It's time to look at Yu-Gi-Oh card lore once again. I've covered this topic 5 other times, but for a reminder of what these videos are like, this is where I take a monster or character on a spell or trap card and connect their backstory based on their appearances on other cards, and then repeat that process 9 more times. For the most part, I'll try to piece together a narrative based on the images, but I'll occasionally throw in some supplementary lore from other Yu-Gi-Oh media or some of my own theories if the cards skip a few visual plot points. Now, let's open up the 6th top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster card backstories. Number 10, Shiny Black Sea. There's a legion of cockroaches in Yu-Gi-Oh! Called the Sea Squad. Where there's one, there are many, and they are led by Shiny Black Sea Squatter, whose lore states what they're all about. Wherever there are shadows, you'll find the Sea Squad. Their hidden flying abilities let them confront the giants on equal terms. So this Sentai Kamen Rider Insector adjacent fellow uses his powers to infest your home with cockroaches. Or maybe he's like Dr. Bees and thinks a large influx of cockroaches will protect your home. Regardless, on the various sea cards, we get to see the plight of the cockroaches described from the perspective of an unfortunate person. Each of the sea effect monsters is a different level 1 through 7, but it doesn't appear the story goes in order of the bug's levels. It all starts on Shiny Black Sea, where a single cockroach invaded the home. It sits in the darkness as its shining eyes look back at you. But as mentioned, where there's one, there are many. And then we see the most infamous of the sea, Max Sea. It seems the Shiny Black Sea was not alone. Now watch as they swarm your home and hand with cards as your opponent's special summons. But they do more than just stare back at you. One finally makes a move on Flying Sea. So how do you fight back? On confronting the sea, the guy slowly approaches the Flying Sea as he tries to swat it with a newspaper. He even made a little shield with a pot cover. That's cute. But it looks like he swatted the Flying Sea with no results, as now it's retaliating with a vengeance. All the seas look back at him from all over the room, and he drops his newspaper. Then they finally make contact on Contact Sea, giving this guy quite the scare, causing him to drop his pot lid too. You could also swap those last 2 parts and say it made contact first, causing him to drop both items, and then it goes into retaliating mode after that. But either way, that is but a taste of their power. And then, I guess they go back into hiding. They don't seem to have an end goal other than to just show their authority. The last known part of this story is on Hiding Sea, where it appears they have populated even more in this guy's home, and now he's nervously trying to find them all after he discarded his weapons. Well, time to grab the eradicating aerosol. It's gonna be a long night. Number 9, Field Commander Roz. Roz is probably the 3rd most well-known member of General Freed's army, next to Marauding Captain and Freed himself, both of which had their backstories covered on my original backstory list. But there's probably a reason Roz isn't as well recognized as his allies. His adventures are less remarkable. Instead of leading an army, meeting a lizard man, cooking, and taking damage in the heat of battle, Roz mostly gets his ass kicked, but not as epically or comedically as his army comrades. He more gets beaten up passively in the background of more prolific stories, but because he's a part of one of the most iconic armies in Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster lore, let's take a closer look at his role. His job seems to be leading the smaller troops into battle, amplified by his effect that puts a level 4 or lower warrior monster at the top of your deck, readying them for the front lines. But with Freed and Marauding Captain getting lost in the different dimension, Roz has to go on a recovery mission. He reports the missing warriors to the Tyrant, another monster backstory I covered on the original backstory list, who scolds Roz for losing his most powerful and tactical soldiers. Now it was up to Roz to fix this by approaching the dimensional fissure and rescuing the trapped soldiers from this dimensional prison. On the card Chain Summoning, we see Roz is standing his ground by holding a chain to pull Freed and the captain out of the fissure all by himself, with the shading making him look quite epic, probably the coolest he's ever looked. And after that, he goes back to getting his ass kicked based on cards that came out out after chain summoning. Unmotivating Captain, he's one of the various soldiers who was rocked on the battlefield, forcing the captain to block shots and tell everyone to get up as Roz appears to be out cold. It's okay though, since he gets taken to the first aid squad, where he gets bandaged up with another fallen soldier and the general, while the captain gets the more tough love treatment from Muscle Medic. Roz gets to sit back, while the captain is instead thrown back to the front. Of course, the captain escapes battle for a bit to cook, and one of those people that he's cooking for is Roz, showing why the captain is the more memorable of the crew. He takes on more roles, while Roz just sits in the back waiting for food. And that's the end for Roz. He shines in his one moment rescuing, and then becomes a background character. If I had to compare Fried's army to Frieza's army in Dragon Ball Z, Roz is like Kui, who does more than the nameless henchman, but way less than the other named members. Number 8. Conductor of Nephthys. The followers of Nephthys have one goal, and that's to revive the sacred phoenix of Nephthys. It's a beautiful creature whose feathers are aflame, and its tailwind can create fire that you've never seen before. That being said, its revival was meant to provide miracles and joy, so the fire should be controlled when it's brought back, right? In the past, the only current member of the Nephthys tribe was the Hand of Nephthys, who was successful at bringing out the phoenix, indicated by her effect that lets you summon it, and the fact that she was the only other Nephthys monster released alongside the phoenix. In later years, when we got newer Nephthys monsters, there seems to have been a time skip, where the current Nephthys tribe is led by the Hand, who is now the matriarch of Nephthys. She's older now, and has a group of fellow leaders, being the Chronicler, Defender, Devotee, and Disciple, who's the future of Nephthys. The matriarch spends her time trying to call forth the phoenix from its ancient statue, Nephthys, the sacred preserver, where she is seen at the bottom of the altar. When there's a sign the phoenix is set to return, she calls the rest of the tribe, including all the nameless members, and has the devotee lead them in the ancient ritual to bring it out on rebirth of Nephthys. And there it is! It emerges as the cerulean sacred phoenix of Nephthys. Why do I hear boss music? This phoenix was not friendly like the phoenix of legend. It cast fire upon the land, trying to destroy it on last hope of Nephthys. Maybe something was done wrong during the ritual. Well, as the card name Last Hope of Nephthys implies, the tribe has a last-ditch effort to save themselves. We see the Disciple of Nephthys is the Hope, where her internal power is the only thing that can stop the rampaging phoenix. The devotee transfers her summoning power to the Disciple in a quick ritual to turn her into Conductor of Nephthys. Look at her shine with those phoenix feathers. She breaks the cerulean phoenix out of its shell on awakening of Nephthys to transform it into what was meant to be summoned, Nephthys, the Sacred Flame. The phoenix then did a wing blast to extinguish the flames and return the land back to how it once was. Now with the Conductor around, the followers of Nephthys could enjoy the peace and the beauty of the phoenix without fear. Number 7. The Dream Mirror of Joy and Terror. The Dream Mirror archetype has some of my favorite art in the series. It's either cool or cute. I keep on trying to make a deck with them, but they're not that great, so I'll at least show off why they're great with their storyline. It all starts off on Dream Mirror Oniromancy, where we see a little girl and her puppy sleeping away, and we soon learn that there are some complex dreams going on. Oniromancy is the concept that dreams can predict the future, so what visions could this girl be seeing? The exact image of the girl sleeping appears on Dream Mirror Phantasms, where Oniros, the Dream Mirror Earl King, is watching back, and thus, on Dream Mirror Fantasy, the girl is whisked away to a dream world. While she passes by a variety of real-life things like makeup and boba tea, the girl gravitates towards a mirror, the Dream Mirror of Joy. Oniros, who is previously watching her, takes the form of Neroy, the Dream Mirror disciple, and guides her through the Joy Realm. I assume these monsters are the same, since Neroy is a play on Oniros, and both monsters are based on Oniros in Greek mythology, who is the personification of dreams. In their journey, the girl meets a knight, a maiden, maiden and even a fantasy version of her dog, but as her dreams shift, the realm shifts to the dream mirror of terror and back and forth. As we see on Dream Mirror Hypnagogia, the monsters are one and the same. The joy monsters see their terror counterparts and vice versa when they look in the mirror, but with the constant shifting of light and darkness in the realms, the mirrors get shattered and born anew with the Dream Mirror of Chaos combining the two worlds. Based on this card's effect letting you fusion summon either the light or dark Oniros fusion monster, I presume when the Chaos Mirror comes out, this may be when Neroy reveals to the girl that he was Oniros this whole time, and then I guess they just have a grand adventure. Maybe they fight their counterparts, or maybe the terror side isn't that bad and they just look scary. We don't get to see many of the monsters in action on other cards, so unlocking the mystery of them is up to this girl's imagination. But we do get a nice finale on Dream Mirror Recap, where it's now breakfast time and the girl is telling her brother about the fantastic world she dreamed of, and the brother is amazed that he was a cool guy in her dream, Morpheus, the Dream Mirror Black Knight. With her dog also being a character in the dream, perhaps every Dream Mirror monster is someone in her life. Maybe she's even Icarus in this world. I love the recap card because it embodies that childhood excitement of telling your friends about an epic dream that you had that they were in, and they get into it too.
You're not gonna believe what I dreamt last night. So there was this dude, and he was in all this armor, and he was totally dark, but his eyes were shining red. Have you really seen anybody with red eyes? His sword was huge, and it was also red like his eyes. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, he looked like you.
No way, I was that cool?
Yeah, you.
Whoa, nice! You should have more dreams. Number 6, Condemned Dark Lord. On my second backstory list, I covered Condemned Maiden, who seemed like she reached the end of her story, but it turns out she was only halfway done, enough to warrant a whole new segment to cover her new forms. To summarize how she got to her original dark form, she was one of many angels who lived in the sanctuary in the sky with God. With his authority, he warned the angels never to touch the forbidden items. Very simple. They all have forbidden in their names, so you know what not to touch. So you know what this maiden did? She grabbed the lance, drank from the chalice, wore the dress, and stole the scripture. When God found out, he gave her the solemn treatment. He scolded her, judged her, and finally solemn struck her down, condemning her to hell as her feathers of light turned to darkness. And I thought the story was going to be done there when I did the original entry, as the maiden has to think about what she did wrong for all eternity, but instead of wallowing in her sorrow, she sought revenge and power afterwards. First off, her new effect lets you activate one quick play spell from your hand at any time, being a nod to how all the forbidden items that she touched were quick play spells. But she needed to evolve more. Her time in condemnation allowed her darkness to grow. As her horns got darker, her eyes turned red and her skin turns gray. I'm not sure if this is the power of the forbidden items coursing through her veins, or if this is just the effects of being in hell for so long, or maybe a combination of both. But either way, the witch rises from the anti-heavens and challenges God's power with her own now. In a role reversal, we see on Witch's Strike that she's now striking down God with her own power, where he's either too tired from doing the solemn strike, or there was a big battle off-screen against the witch and she weakened him too much, and now that she wins, she gets to take his power to fully upgrade to a Dark Lord. While she may just be able to absorb his power to go full Dark Lord, I think based on a few other cards, the maiden was up there specifically to get the Forbidden Chalice. The droplet in it seems to have a divine power that either purifies or corrupts. On the card Dark Lord Contract, we see a different Dark Lord, Nastin, is walking up the stairs to the sanctuary in the sky to meet with God, and on the card the Sanctified Dark Lord, we see God is pouring the chalice on Nastin, supposedly ridding him of his Dark Lord ways. So when the witch defeats God, Nastin tries to stop her, but she's become too powerful, either taking God's power to upgrade to a Dark Lord or taking the Forbidden Droplet. Either way, now that she has the Forbidden Droplet, she can corrupt the domain to her liking. She administers the Forbidden Droplet to Nastin in a reversal of the artwork on the Sanctified Dark Lord. I can't tell if if these demons crawling on him are trying to re-corrupt him or just kill him. And Nastin's not the only victim. Condemned Dark Lord spreads the droplet to the angels that were standing alongside God on the card Solemn Scolding to turn them into Indulged Dark Lord and Capricious Dark Lord. Who knows who else she corrupted? It may not be a happy ending, but it's the ending we get, like when you win with Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat 2. The world may have never-ending darkness now because you won with a villain, but have a nice day. Number 5. Unauthorized boot-up device. This rambunctious robotic scamp likes to go around finding deactivated robots and boot them back up, but makes them evil when it does that. The device's main target in its story is the Machina archetype. The Machina are a bunch of robot warriors that go into battle and combine forces to create bigger robots, like how Machina Megaform consists of Machina Gearframe and Peacekeeper attached to Machina Fortress. Also, their Japanese name is Machiner, so maybe it's supposed to be pronounced Machina, but I've always said Machina, so I'll be sticking with that. As with most technology, old or defective Machina units are turned off and left in the scrap heap. However, when an authorized boot-up device sees all this unused technology, it decides to create a little chaos. Its first victim is the defunct Machina soldier, who it reboots on unauthorized reactivation. It gets reborn as Machina Possessed Storage. Besides having a new name and effect, its attribute is now dark. Normal Machina units are Earth attribute, showing that this boot-up device has a sinister plan when reviving them. And perhaps this wasn't the first victim, because in the background of Possessed Storage's card, you can see Machina Resavenger, who is Machina Defender after being revived by the boot-up device, showing that this device is going down the line. It then finds Machina Sniper and revives it as Machina Unclaspar. The boot-up device might have known that these three robots could combine into Machina Force in their original forms, so it has these dark machines combine into a more corrupted robot, Machina Ruin Force. The boot-up device is leading the charge here since it's front and center on the unit, and now they can, well, they don't seem to appear on any other cards at the time of this video's release, but they're probably going to fight the rest of the Machina as revenge for shutting them down. I think the perfect conclusion to this backstory would be printing a few cards that have Ruin Force going up against the strongest uncorrupted robot, Machina Citadel. The good ending would have Citadel ripping out the boot-up device and reverting these robots back to normal, but who knows, maybe the darkness of Ruin Force will ruin the day. Number 4. Ally of Justice Catastor. This machine is one of the strongest of the Ally of Justice robots. They were created to fend off against the worm alien invasion. One day, the W Nebula meteorite crashes to Earth, and creatures called worms emerge from it. While their in-game effects are weak, their threat to the story is strong, destroying the environment as they invade. 4 different elemental tribes teamed up to fight against them: the X-Sabers, Flamval, Mist Valley, and Ice Barrier. With their knowledge, they created machines that could destroy the worms with ease. They were called Ally of Justice, basing their designs on their own inhabitants and just cool-looking robots. The tribes took remnants from the meteorite to create the core for these Allies of Justice, called Ally Mind. Various Ally Minds can be seen attached to different Allies of Justice, including Catastor. In Catastor's mission to defeat some worms, it descends a rough, snowy area on Lost Star Descent. It's unclear if this is by the meteorite or just somewhere on its way to it, but based on a few other cards, it's possible that this is near the Mist Valley, where one of its allies is. The Mist Valley were the most dubious of the Alliance, finding some of the resources for the Allies of Justice to be unethical, but creatures known as the Fabled soon took advantage of that mistrust on mind pollution. The Fabled are demons awakened by the struggle going on, and they want to cause their own mischief. Fabled Raven gets a hold of Mist Valley Thunderlord and enhances his negative thoughts on the Ally of Justice project, so the Lord grabs Catastor in response and rips it apart in rage. The robot lies there in ruins, as one of the hopes of the universe is defeated by another threat that was unrelated to the one that they were still trying to beat. They either try to rebuild it, or they still have a prototype of it lying flying around with Ally of Justice Core Destroyer, which came out after Catastor in the real-life card game, but could just be an early model of Catastor in canon. But regardless, Catastor was lost forever. Or was it? Because of various other storylines going on alongside the Worm and Fabled struggle, including the Gishki tribe and Vylons freeing the Steel Swarm, as discussed on my 4th backstory list, the negative energy in the air formed an infestation known as the Evil Swarm, reviving those who had fallen in battle against the Worms and Fabled. One of these revived creatures was our buddy Catastor, looking a bit more creepy there as Evil Swarm Golem now, where they rummaged together a bunch of parts and stuck some insect legs on him. And sadly, that ends Catastor's story, with no good end in sight. Perhaps he can gain some form of sentience one day, but it's left off there. And you may wonder, whatever happened to the Worms or Fabled storyline after Catastor fell out of it? Well, we'll cover that in the next entry. Number 3, Gen X Controller. There was another faction taking on the Worms, the Gen X. They are mysterious machines with no known origin who naturally protect the environment, so the Worms were their enemy because of that. The Gen X Controller is the focal point of the Gen X operations, being able to communicate with and upgrade the Gen X robots to their strongest forms. There was also a backup controller called Gen X Spare, who was captured by the Allies of Justice and used to create their strongest weapon to date, Ally of Justice Field Marshal. While it was able to take out many Worms, it was overpowered by a bunch of them on the way to the battlefield one day. When the Marshal crashed and burned, its remains landed near where the Gen X controller was. Gen X Spare popped out of it, and in his dying motions, he handed off his flower that he loved so much to the controller. Seeing these scars of war, the Gen X evolved to be more combat-oriented with bulkier designs. The Allies of Justice dip into the Gen X pool once more to create the R-Gen X, but their most prolific worm defense mechanism at this point was a giant flying fortress called Ally of Justice Decisive Armor. And the core of this device would be none other than the original Gen X controller. With its power, it was able to take on the final boss of the Worms, Worm Zero, which was an amalgamation of all the remaining worms into a giant ball of sorts. It fires its laser, and with this vintage technology flowing throughout its robotic veins, that worm stood no chance. It's a direct hit. And thus, the day was saved thanks to Gen X Controller. Wait, weren't there a bunch of Fabled running around too? Uh-oh. After defeating the Worms, the Fabled were now the main threat, so the 4 elemental tribes form a more direct alliance with the Gen X and put them on the machine assembly line to repair and improve them. And look at that arm on the assembly line. Even Gen X Spare appears to get repurposed. I hope he gets his flower back too. These new Gen X ally machines resemble the monsters from each tribe, and they're ready to take on the Fabled. However, the Gen X part of the story basically ends here, as a different group of monsters joins in on the party to be the real MVPs against the Fabled. Let's go to the next entry. Number 2, Jurak Meteor. The Jurak are a bunch of dinosaurs on fire who live outside the area where all the other tribes are. While Jurak Meteor doesn't appear on many cards, the central card to its storyline, Jurak Impact, has so much going on to help us explain this part of the story. Far in the distance, you can see the melted city where Worm Zero was landing, showing how out of the way these dinosaurs truly were from the conflict. But with the Fabled going beyond the boundaries of the Worms to wreak havoc, the dinosaurs had to fight. They all fought back the only way they knew how, lighting themselves on fire. With the Fabled evenly matched against the brute force fire of the Jurak, one of the Fabled leaders, Valkyrius, enters the Jurak realm to finish what the weaker Fabled couldn't. However, the Jurak are not going down easily. A majority of the remaining Jurak combined forces to create the end-all be-all Jurak Meteor. Considering its materials need to be a Jurak tuner and at least 2 other dinosaur monsters, it reflects how this is a Jurak amalgamation. Its effect destroys everything on the field to show how it's a last-ditch effort to clear all evil because it destroys everything overall, no matter if it's friend or foe. And we see this total annihilation in action on Jurak Impact, where the Fable are regressing regretting picking on these dinosaurs. Fabled Urustos, Raven, Nozuchi, and Ms. Toji see that they're all screwed as they're trapped in the pathway of the meteor, while Pegasus and a few others attempt to flee before they're hit by the recoil. Meanwhile, Jurak, Monoloth, and Storiko look with exaggerated anime shock as the meteor falls, and they're like, that was their plan this whole time? These dinosaurs deserve credit too, since they fought the Fabled on the ground as the other Jurak combined into the meteor. And with the impact, everything nearby was destroyed, but the Jurak do get a second life. Remember the Flamvel tribe that was involved in creating the Allies of Justice? These Jurak get reborn as the little flame guys within their tribe, basically what's going on with the card rekindling, and then those flame guys form into new fire-themed monsters known as Neo Flamvel, and then we get cards like the Shaman or the Hedgehog. Are you related to Thousand Needles? All this commotion awakens the ancient Flamvel deity, who sees all the evil running around and is like, yeah, we don't need this, and wipes out the remaining Fabled with a cool pose. So in the end, not the worst outcome for the Jurak. They at least all get reborn, though the one that gets reincarnated as Neo Flamvel Hedgehog becomes Shadal Hedgehog, so maybe it's not the best timeline for that one. For number 1, I wanted to cover one of the most antagonistic forces in Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster lore that goes under the radar in terms of backstory because they're rarely played as the focal archetype of a deck. They're usually just an engine for various water decks. Number 1, Poseidra the Atlantean Dragon and the rest of the Atlantean forces. These Atlanteans have terrorized other monsters and archetypes that would have otherwise remained peaceful. They've attacked the Spiral Serpent, the Fire Kings, and the Mermales, usually for power, territory, or treasure, or just a combination of all of that. Poseidra seems to be their leader based on his role on other cards. He seems to be related to legendary Atlantean Trident, both of which have their homeland in the background of their cards, known as a legendary ocean, which is straight up called Atlantis in Japanese, confirming its connection to the Atlanteans. On call of the Atlanteans, we see Poseidra readies the dragoons for their various invasions. He also leads the marksmen, attack squad, pikemen, and heavy infantry to their first mission, capturing the Spiral Serpent to use as a tool of war. It's capable of producing massive whirlpools, so it would be quite useful. The marksmen distracted it as the other Atlanteans swam in from behind it on Phantasm Spiral Battle. Based on the lore of its evolved form, Phantasm Spiral Dragon, it apparently escaped from the Atlanteans tired and scarred from battle, but wherever it went, an ancient light then shined upon it to restore it and upgrade its power, along with giving it fancy new horns. This light might be related to Ocean Lord Neo Daedalus, since the Spiral Serpent is seen being pulled away from it on Xyz's Dimension Splash. With this new power, the dragon seeks revenge against the Atlanteans, so their battle is not done yet. However, the Atlanteans have other goals in the meantime, so they head to their next target, Lemuria, the Forgotten City, which is the underwater homeland of the Mermales. The Mermales are a peaceful tribe that can fight back if needed, mostly being friendly-looking mermaids or fish people. They have 3 enchanted suits of armor, Abyss Scale of Cetus, Kraken, and Mizuchi. Whoever wields all 3 and a hidden bracelet is said to be able to rule over all the Mermales as king, so no doubt that's what Poseidra was after. Only the Mermale Queen knows where the bracelet is, so Poseidra finds her, interrogates her, and steals it. He puts it around his neck, and most of the Mermales follow him in an almost hypnotic fashion. So with many of the Mermales on his side, he sets his sights for the final stop of this story, Fire King Island. The Fire Kings just want to live on their island in peace, making fire creations and protecting their volcano, but the Atlanteans want something from them, whether it's territory or some artifacts that they're hiding. But regardless, the Atlanteans are invading during high tide on Fire King Island, creating quite the conflict. With the power of the Mermail weaponry being water-based, you could imagine how the fire versus water matchup goes. The Fire Kings are easily extinguished, so Poseidra sends in his troops and the Mermales, either in their special armor or just with their own power. Abysscorn shows us that when provoked, the mermales have terrifying reactions. Mermail Abyssstein looks so innocent before revealing that her hair is a weapon and she has spooky eyes. But some mermales think Poseidra is going too far. Mermail Abysslind opposes, so Poseidra uses one of the mermail weapons to trap her in a bubble and suffocate her in one of the darkest Yu-Gi-Oh cards I've seen. On the uncensored Japanese card, she's grabbing her throat and screaming as if her breathing supply is running out. Please save this mermail, I like her. So with the mermails and the Atlanteans keeping the Fire Kings down, the Fire Kings tap into the remaining power for their ace. The Fire Kings combine their power to bring out their strongest creature, Fire King High Avatar Garunix, and now we're seeing the true onslaught of the Fire Kings. While Poseidra analyzes the situation on what to do next, he unintentionally gets some help when the Phantasm Spiral Dragon appears for revenge against the Atlanteans on Phantasm Spiral Assault. The dragon appears to have risen from the bottom of the ocean on Phantasm Spiral Power, but with another big beast being summoned at the same time and the Fire Kings not knowing if this dragon was friend or foe of the Atlanteans, Garunix attacks the Spiral Dragon first. We see the famous Phantasm Spiral Wave clash with the Fire Blast of Garunix as the two appear to be on par with each other in terms of power, with the Atlanteans seeing this distraction as a great opportunity to take another stab at capturing the dragon. The various Atlantean troops get a hold of the dragon from below on Phantasm Spiral Grip. Meanwhile, Poseidra intervenes by stabbing the dragon with his tail on Phantasm Spiral Crash. While we don't see how the battle ultimately plays out, it's possible the dragon makes it out okay because Poseidra is about to make one fatal mistake that ends his story and the conflict. Apparently, wearing that mermail bracelet helps revive the true mermail king, so with Poseidra being arrogant and using it as jewelry, it caused him to accidentally summon the king on Abyss Squall. The seas rage as the nearby mermail are bounced around by this awesome power, including Abysslind. Glad she got out of the Abyss Spear, or did that part happen after this? Poseidra disappears, leaving only the bracelet behind, and then reforms as Mermail Abyssgios, who is the original king of legend. This essentially kills Poseidra since his body is now being overridden by the Mermail King. The bracelet Poseidra wore around his neck is now around the king's arm. Perhaps the queen knew that this would happen, which is how Poseidra was able to obtain the bracelet so easily. With Poseidra gone and the Mermail King uninterested in this conflict, the Atlantean forces flee and the mermails retreat. Plus the Fire Kings seem to have made it out okay with their circle of life continuing, so not a bad ending all around. It's cool how the Atlantean engine in the real life card game synergizes with the mermail effects to show how these two factions work together in the backstory, even if it was under duress from the Atlantean threats. So with all the twists and turns in the Atlantean Mermail Fire King Phantasm Dragon struggle, it earned its spot at the top of this edition of the Top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Card Backstories. Now, what did you think? What were your favorite backstories that I discussed? Any details that you would include with these stories that I might have glossed over? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.